Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it. Write for Pollution Booklet, Box 1771, Radio City Station, New York.
Silent Spring, written by Rachel Carson in 1963, launched the environmental movement into a new phase and was the turning point in the banning of DDT and other pesticides and insecticides in America. Along with the environmental movement, the 1960s was a time of other social and political activism that emerged as a result of the aftermath of the Second World War.
The Second World War ended with the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The 1940s included the highest levels of lead arsenic use. Because of the chemical warfare, including nuclear weapons during World War II, many Americans feared the aftermath of such decisions. The end of World War II led to many movements involving anti-war, sexual liberation, civil rights, and the birth of rock and roll.
The 50s in America were characterized by a new sense of freedom. The economy boomed, birth rates soared, and people began to challenge the beliefs on which America had stood for generations. This new sense of freedom was reflected by the music of the time, as exemplified by the upbeat, provocative music of Elvis Presley and the Beatles.
Well, that was just a lie. Yeah, they said you was high class. Well, that was just a lie. Yeah, you ain't never caught a rabbit and you ain't no friend of mine. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. Well, you ain't never caught a rabbit and you ain't no friend of mine.
The unpopular Vietnam War, which drained America of millions of dollars and tens of thousands of lives, fueled a powerful anti-war movement that was carried out by youth all over the country. Women, exploring their new roles within family and society, felt liberated by this, and thus the feminist movement was launched. In addition, people of all races joined together to fight for racial equality.
The new lifestyle in the United States and increased economic prosperity brought more consumers into American families. As nuclear war and chemical use aftermath seemed to grow more eminent, the media took advantage of this fear. Clothing companies produced appropriate attire for living after nuclear proliferation. Companies produced survival kits, and many Americans, including government officials, began to build fallout shelters to protect them from environmental problems stemming from chemical and nuclear warfare. The movie industry created films that were hugely successful about the end of the world through chemical and nuclear warfare.
The story of a miraculous white powder that is helping to win the war. Its name is dichloro-diphenyl-trichloroethane, for short, DDT. It may one day prove our greatest weapon towards victory over an enemy more murderous even than the fascist. Against disease. Yes, today DDT is necessarily a military weapon. We're turning it out by the thousands of tons, but every ounce is needed for the war effort. When the fascist is finally beaten, though, DDT will be available to all.
Carson, shocked by the dependence of Americans and the world on insecticides that emerged from chemical weapons research during the Second World War, chose to look at modern agriculture in her book, Silent Spring. Prior to publishing Silent Spring, Carson had to confront the hurdle of being a female in a male-dominated profession, and she had to put up with a junior role at the Fish and Wildlife Service. Only after publishing 2 other books, along with the success of her second one, The Sea Around Us, was she able to write full-time and publish Silent Spring.
Nothing you can say, but you can learn how to play the game. It's easy.
DDT was used in abundance and sprayed on peanuts, beans, tomatoes, and other crops. In addition, it was sprayed around the world to kill mosquitoes and other insects that spread diseases such as malaria.
Remember the name, Pestroy DDT. It spells certain death to all insects I've mentioned so far, and others too.
There must be a catch to it. Maybe Pestroy hurts humans too.
No, sir. It harms only us, the citizens of Bucknam. Used right, it is absolutely harmless to humans and animals. But to insects, it is deadly.
However, DDT had lethal consequences for fish as well as birds. It killed insects that birds ate, and as a result of biomagnification, birds contained immense traces of DDT. For many birds, including the bald eagle, DDT caused the shells of eggs to be extremely thin that hatched prematurely. The fragility of the shells resulted in the crushing of the eggs from the parents' weight, killing the embryos. This came as a shock to Americans, as the bald eagle has been the nation's symbol since 1782.
We poison the caddisflies in a stream, and the poison travels from link to link of the food chain, and soon the birds of the lake margins become its victims, and the following springs are silent of robin song.
Carson referred to DDT as the elixir of death, and critics referred to her as the hysterical woman. Insecticide manufacturers also sued her publishing company, Houghton Mifflin, unsuccessfully as they questioned the facts. Toxicologists did confirm the accuracy of her book, and it became a national bestseller.
It was found after the publication of Rachel Carson's Silent Spring that women received Carson's theories better than men did. Women were more concerned with the health of their families, and as a result wanted to protect them from the problems that arise from DDT. Men tended to feel that Carson was an overly emotional and worried woman, making the issue of DDT bigger than it needed to be. Men generally accused Carson of being a bird lover and a tree hugger. The only men who received Carson's theory well in the beginning were those who hunted, because they saw the effect firsthand through the decimation of bird populations. Lower bird populations harmed hunting success, making it more difficult to provide for one's family.
Silent Spring was the catalyst for the founding of the Environmental Defense Fund in 1967, which later led the battle to ban DDT. The arguments used in the court hearings reflected the major points that Carson had made in Silent Spring. After 1963, when the book was published, multiple federal laws and hundreds of state laws were enacted governing protection of air and water, wildlife, and humans from the effect of pesticides, their manufacture, and disposal. The growth in federal environmental legislation was exponential, and in 1970, the Environmental Protection Agency was created with the mission to protect the total environment. 2 years later, in 1972, the EPA succeeded in banning the use of DDT. The bald eagle, whose population in 1963 was numbered at 417 male-female pairs, benefited greatly from this ban, and by 2007, there were 10,000 male-female pairs in the United States.
The Rachel Carson National Wildlife Refuge in Maine was dedicated in 1970, and in 1980, President Jay Carter awarded her the Presidential Award of Freedom. In 1981, the Carson postal stamp was issued by the United States Post Office in Springdale, Pennsylvania, her birthplace. Silent Spring has been called one of the most influential books of the 20th century, and Carson was selected by Life magazine as one of the 100 most important Americans of the 20th century. Even after her death in 1964 from heart disease and complications from breast cancer, Rachel Carson continued to receive prestigious awards and honors.
Man's attitude toward nature is today critically important, simply because we have now acquired a fateful power to alter and to destroy nature. But man is part of nature, and his war against nature is inevitably a war against himself.
Rachel Carson's legacy has continued to leave its mark since her death 48 years ago. Upon publishing Silent Spring, she was confronted with harsh criticism. When people asked about why she refused to defend herself, she answered that the course of events would provide the answers. Time has proven that Rachel Carson is as much a prophet as a writer and scientist. The release of Silent Spring was a landmark event that stimulated the growth of the environmental movement and helped it flourish for decades to follow.
Yeah, we trying to stop terrorism, but we still got terrorists here living in the USA.